Happy Tuesday, everybody. This is Kristen from the Atlanta Community Food Bank coming to you live from the Kaiser Permanente Learning Kitchen. Did you know that May is Burger Month and also Blood Pressure Month? There is a relationship between these two things a little bit, so I'm going to talk to you about how salt and the way that you prepare your foods can help or hinder your blood pressure health and your heart health. So let's get started. So what's blood pressure, you ask? Blood pressure is the literal pressure in your arteries that your blood puts on them when it moves through your body. So this can be affected by how much salt you intake or how little salt you intake. So salt is required for normal blood pressure, but it has a delicate balance. So it's normal for your blood pressure to go up and down during the day. It's completely normal. We might be stressed for a second, your blood pressure is going to go up because your body is trying to regulate itself. So it's completely normal. But when your blood pressure is higher more consistently throughout the day, that's when you can have a little bit more of the negative effects of blood pressure. Okay, this is big. Most Americans eat more than 2 times the sodium that they need. Remember, I said that it's required. It is very necessary to have salt in your diet, but we are most of the time eating way too much salt. So I'm going to talk to you about how you can focus on how you prepare your own foods and limit the amount of salt, but also get flavor from other outlets. Okay, tips for eating less salt. We want you to focus on what you're eating and drinking. So when you can, think about it before you make a choice on your food. Also, when we eat out at fast food and just restaurants in general, they don't really pay attention to the amount of salt that they use. So when you are meal prepping, you are in control. You have the opportunity to decide how much salt you put into your food, and then you can consider the other ways to include flavor. So also reducing some stress there. I'm a big fan of meal prepping, but I also want you to think you don't have to prepare everything at the same time for the entire week. That sounds like a lot. For me, I cook 2 times a week, and I cook 1 or 2 things to last for a few days, and then I'll cook again. So keep that in mind. We are going to talk about burgers now. So since May is National Burger Month, kids are getting out of school. We're going to be cooking at home a little bit more, or maybe it will be easier to eat out more once kids are home. So I want to talk to you about a couple of ways that you can prepare burgers that will add some good flavor. We're going to stretch the meat a little bit in one of these burgers, and all the while talking about salt. So first burger is our blended burger. So I've got here 1 pound of lean ground beef. Buy it as lean as you can. The leaner it gets, the more expensive it is. So you can consider things like choosing a lean pack and a not so lean pack and mixing it together. And that will be a way that you can make it all fit. One thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to add some mushrooms. So this is 1 pack of mushrooms. So it says half a pound. It doesn't seem like a lot because once you cook them down, they're going to reduce in size a lot. So this is half a pound, just chopped up really small. I put them in my pan and gave them a saute with a little bit of oil, and I added some garlic and onion. Smells so good. I didn't actually add any salt to this mixture. The salt is going to be added to the rest of the mixture. But this is a good way to add a lot of savory flavor without adding a ton of salt. So we're going to think about the mushrooms and the onion and the garlic as very flavorful vegetables. It's a good way to incorporate more flavor without so much salt. So I'm just going to mix this up here. And I'm going to talk to you about this second burger that I have. Okay. Put on some gloves. Okay, so 1 pound of meat. Let me get my mushrooms here. One thing about the mushrooms, when you are cooking them, you want to cook them until the liquid has evaporated. You don't want them to be too wet because it's going to make the mixture too wet and then it won't hold together. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a squish before I add the salt. Okay, this is half a teaspoon of salt. So this is a good rule of thumb to think about whenever you are cooking at home. So we can always add more salt, but we can't take it away. So let's start with less, and then we can taste, and then we can add some more if we need it. So thinking about half a teaspoon of salt, that's going to be divided across all of the burgers, and it's going to decrease how much it affects your blood pressure. Okay. Getting this all nice and mixed up. It smells so good. The mushrooms are they smell tasty. You know how things taste the way they smell or smell the way they taste, you know. That's a saying, right? Okay, so nice and mixed up here. So this mixture is going to make 4 burgers. Okay, there we go. Easy way to try to get even burgers is to divide the mix in half and then divide those halves into half again. So that is a good way to do it. I'm going to pass this over to my intern. She's going to patty out our burgers. I'm going to talk to you about our second burger that we have today. So slide this over here. Okay, so this other burger, my pan's nice and hot and ready for the other burger. So this burger is we call this a half-veggie burger. So let's take a look at it under this other camera so you can get a better close look. You can see them. So what makes them a half-veggie burger is that they have cooked lentils added to the mixture. So I'm going to call this a stretch burger too. So 1 pound of meat can give you about 4 burgers, but when you add something else to it, you're going to stretch how far the meat can go, and you're going to get more servings out of it. That's also a good way to think about stretching the salt across your meal. So this is 1 pound of meat and 3 cups of cooked lentils. We gave the lentils a good little mash. You can use a fork or you can use a potato masher. Potato masher worked really well for me. Inside of that, I added some, about half of an onion cut really small, about 1/4 of a bell pepper for some color and some extra flavor, and then some raw garlic. That is where our flavor is going to come from. This dish also has only half a teaspoon of salt, but that half a teaspoon is going to be spread out across even more burgers. So the total amount of burgers this makes is 8. I made 4 regular size burgers, and then I made a bunch of little sliders. So if you make small sliders, you can stretch how many even more people that you feed. But you've got to think about where salt is coming from. So you may not be aware or think that bread is going to be a substantial place where salt is found, but salt is found in just about everything. So 90% of the sodium that we eat comes from processed foods, prepackaged, and restaurants, not the salt shaker at home. So when we're cooking at home, we have control of the salt that we put into our foods. I want to just add a little clarifying factor here. Processed is, the word processed means just about everything. So if you think about something that is preserved for longer, that's going to be something that will have a little bit more salt in it than other products. So we can say that technically the dry lentils that we cook today are processed because that's not how they came out of the ground. But we want to think about the preservation piece. Cool. Okay, so I've got my cast iron skillet over here and it's nice and hot. I'm going to take a couple of these burgers and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about blood pressure and what we can do about it. There we go. That's a good sound. We want it to be nice and hot when we add it to the pan. And we want to get a really good brown on one side, and then we'll flip it. So I'm just going to leave it here for a couple minutes and not touch it. It can be really easy to want to flip it and check it consistently, but we're just going to give it a few minutes. And by a few minutes is I'll check it in a minute. We're not timing this out here. Okay. Burgers are cooking. Other burgers are coming up, and I'm going to add the other two of the blended burgers here once they're ready to go. Okay, let's talk about eating less salt. Yes, so we want to, when possible, to look at a nutrition label if we have the opportunity to do that, and think about other places where we can get flavor. So really flavorful vegetables is a great opportunity to reduce the salt. So when I say flavorful vegetables, everything that we have added to these burgers today. Our mushrooms, once they get cooked, are going to be really savory without a lot of salt added to it. Our onion and our garlic, those are called aromatics for a reason. They're going to smell really good once you start cooking it, and they add a lot of flavor. Some other ways can be dried herbs and spices or fresh. So garlic powder, onion powder, those don't have any salt added to them, but pay attention to the label of your package. It often comes as garlic salt or onion salt. So if you're looking to reduce the salt in your foods, look for the powder, not the salt. So that is a good thing to pay attention to. Sizzling over here. So some foods are just going to be salty right off the bat. So there are some ways that you can incorporate them into your diet without eating all of the additional salt. Oh my gosh, look at these burgers. This is the blended burger. It has the mushrooms in it. Those are beautiful. So if you notice that these look like little mounds here. I have a little quick tip that helps that. I don't have a glove on, so I'm going to use a spoon. But another dietitian that I know taught me this. If you put a little dent in the middle, kind of treat it like a donut, not a full-on donut, just a little dip there in the middle, it helps it to flatten out a little bit. Because I am notorious for making little hockey pucks instead of burgers. So I'm just gonna smash it down in the middle just a little bit. Because if you smash the edges, it has a more tendency to kind of fall apart around the edges. So when you just push the middle, it helps. We'll see how well that worked. So I'm gonna add this also to my pan. Those are substantial size burgers, right? So you can make smaller burgers and make more burgers. All right, I'm going to give this other burger a check on the bottom. Let's see how it looks. All right, we got some good color there. I'm going to give it a little scoop first. There we go. Give it a flip. All right, burgers are cooking. I love the sound of that. Okay, back to our little chat here. We're talking about adding flavor. So we're talking about dried herbs and spices, and pay attention to whether you've got a salt added product or a no salt added product. There are lots of blends, seasoning blends that you can get at the grocery store that will have salt added, and there are some that will not. So just take a look at the nutrition label on the back to see if it has salt or not added to it. So I keep mentioning the nutrition label. So there is a way that you can look at the salt and get a good idea of how much it's going to add to your day without looking at the milligrams. So you're thinking, Kristen, I don't want to count milligrams. That's a lot. Sometimes it says 600. Sometimes it says 175. It's a lot of numbers to keep up with. So I would recommend to look at the percentage on the right-hand side of the nutrition label. So a good rule of thumb is that 5% or less on that nutrition label is going to be considered low in salt. If it is 20% or more, it's going to be considered high in salt. So whether you have high blood pressure and you're aiming for 1,500 milligrams of salt per day, that percentage is going to be helpful for you to decide whether it's a good option or a not so good option. Okay. Got a little bit of popping going on over here, but it smells so good. You see this, right? You see this banner on the bottom of the screen? Yes. The average fast food cheeseburger. This is a single cheeseburger. One patty, 1,000 milligrams of sodium. So the general rule for sodium is around 3,400 mil. That's not the right number. That is the number that we do eat. I'm sorry. Caught myself there. 2,400 is the number we're looking at for a healthy amount of salt intake. 3,400 is around the area, which is what we're generally eating here in America. So to avoid that, make your burgers at home. Oh my goodness. So you're thinking, Kristen, you're talking about these numbers and I don't have high blood pressure. There are ways that you can choose healthy opportunities in your life to keep yourself from having high blood pressure. I will also say high blood pressure is also can be genetic, so your risk can be higher based on your family's history. So keep that in mind. You say, I'm doing everything perfect, Kristen, and I still got high blood pressure. It's a little bit more related to your genes in that area. So what are some ways that we can lower our risk for blood pressure? Two big ones are stop smoking cigarettes or don't smoke at all. And then also really reduce alcohol consumption if that's something that you choose. We can be making food decisions around fresh vegetables or frozen vegetables or canned vegetables. They can all fit, but the more vegetables and fruit that we have in our diet will support the health of our body overall. If we're on a medication, we want to continue to take our medication. The medication is not a fix. It's not going to be a cure, but whenever you take some of these healthy steps in your dietary choices and moving your body and things like that, there is potential that you could come off of your medication, but always continue to take it and consult with your doctor and or dietitian. Let me check this burger over here. So, did you know that you can poke the burger and see how soft it is, and that can give you a good idea of what it's like on the inside. This one's got a little bit of give to it. Okay, let's check this mushroom burger. That got a really good sear on that side. Okay. So, what about toppings on burgers? So we're talking about all the salt that's inside the burger and inside the bread, but what about the toppings? What are your favorite toppings? I know I really love pickles on burgers, but pickles are salty. So we need to consider the other things that we're going to put on our burger as we're preparing it. So maybe you want your pickles. Maybe you have high blood pressure. Maybe you can leave the salt out of your burger and get the salt from your pickles and the bread. Just some thoughts to consider as you're choosing some toppings. There's a really cool way to get flavor that I didn't mention earlier, and it's to add something sour to your meal. So instead of using plain lettuce, some people like to say crunchy water. Instead of using plain lettuce, you could add something like a slaw that has a vinegar-based dressing. Like this one I have here. This one was made with apple cider vinegar and some oregano. I just used a bag slaw mix this time around. And there's a little bit of sugar to balance out the vinegar. The vinegar is going to give you, it's going to add to the flavor of your burger and give you the flavor you're looking for without a lot of salt. So that is a good option. All of the fresh veggies are going to be a great option for a burger. Fresh veggies do come with a minimal amount of salt because they grew in the ground and there's salt in the dirt. So that is where it's going to come from, but it won't be a ton coming from that. Negligible amounts. Another way that you can add flavor to your toppings is caramelized onions. So I actually added some balsamic vinegar to mine, and that is going to, the caramelization of the onions is going to be flavor, and then the balsamic is going to be that sour component that I was talking about. Okay. Let's check this guy. I think our lentil burger is ready to go. Let's make us a burger here. So I've got a whole wheat bun. This one's got 210 milligrams of salt, if you were wondering. Some good brown there. Do a little drip. The burger patty here. Add some slaw. Actually, I'm going to do the onions and then the slaw. Onions first. And some slaw. There we go. There's our lower sodium burger. This is the one with the lentils. So lentils are also going to give you good fiber and good protein. I didn't say that earlier, but fiber is always missing from burgers because they're usually just meat. So that's a good example of a stretch burger there. Okay. These guys are going to take just a little bit longer, so I'm not going to keep you hanging here. I hope you will try some different burger recipes and cook at home a little bit more so you can control the salt that is in your food. You can find the recipes and some other heart-healthy information in the link on the bottom of the screen. That's bit.ly/ACFB Nutrition Resources. You're going to go to the videos folder and then pantry to plate. Look for burgers and blood pressure. Okay, friends, we'll be back in 2 weeks on a Tuesday, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.